Okay, this is the Amherst Finance Committee. It is March 22nd. It is a couple minutes after 7, and I'm calling us to order. Amherst Media films all our meetings, and they're played at a later date, so we thank them for doing that for us weekly. So tonight's agenda, it will start with the Community Preservation Act, and then we have a couple of petition articles that we're going to hear, and then some other items on our agenda. So I'm not sure if you know everybody, but why don't you introduce yourself and we'll go around.
My name is Jim Brissett. I'm the LSSC representative to the CPA committee, and I'm the vice chair of the CPA committee.
Okay. And next to you is? She's writing with the green pen.
Sharon Povinelli.
Yeah.
Sorry, my folks.
And
I'm Tim Neal.
Janice Ratner.
Mary Lou Tileman.
Sonia Aldrich.
Bernie Kubiak. Anurag Sharma.
Joseph Jane.
The late Joseph J.
Rob Connor.
The late. Yeah.
Okay.
He's got the late.
All right,
Oh, the late. I thought you said the late.
I did too.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You're not the late.
Okay.
We were counting all the money we made today.
Yes. That's what happened.
Okay. The first item now is the Community Preservation Act, and Jim, if you'd like to take this over.
Well, first I just want to thank the Finance Committee for getting these in the past and supporting us in the past. So that's we appreciate that from you. So we had a lot of proposals this year, but not as many as I think last year was like 18. I think this year we had 13. We declined one, and then the packet that Sonia put before you has our recommendations for town meeting. So I don't know where to start. I'll start, I guess, with housing, because that follows the summary that Sonia and her folks put together. So we had four proposals for housing. We also are recommending transferring some money from what we had set aside in the past from housing to help fund these, but still keep a set aside. That's in the budget. You can see we still have a reserve of about $282,000 in the housing reserve. So you can see all the votes were unanimous except for some abstentions. Housing generated a lot of discussion in our committee. I think as it always does because this tends to take up a significant chunk of CPA money. But I think that somewhat reflects the desire of the town. So this one, the proposals kind of hit three of the general goals for what we understand for the town being the homeless population, kind of I'm going to say middle income families, and to kind of get these two trusts up and running. So I don't know if you want to have I guess I'll just stop there if you want to ask me any questions about any of these proposals.
May I ask just very general question? You mentioned that you have discussions within the committee about housing that's going to generate a lot of conversation. Could you give us a sense of the themes in those conversations? Like, are there multiple points of views, or there's a single dominant point of view, or?
Oh no, I think there's multiple points of view because I think that's the nature of the CPA committee because we have people from every different areas plus at-large members. So it's not I
So
don't think
could you give us a little kind of contours of those kind of discussions?
Yeah, I think there's a general sense that we would like to see more bricks and mortar. Under the CPA committee, though, or the CPA Act, you can have support in other ways for housing. So we kind of are always trying to balance that need, especially in relation to the homeless population and affordable housing. And I think that's the basic. There's that desire to kind of support programs, but also to kind of have funding set aside or devoted to bricks and mortar.
And what's the funding right now? Though 50-50 for those, or how is the funding?
Well, if you look here, I think it's more. I think it definitely leans more towards. I guess depending on your point of view.
And the proportional budget.
You mean just for the housing?
Yeah.
I think it's more like 60-40 in favor of bricks and mortar.
Okay.
And I think you can look at also what we've what the town has approved for some of the proposals in the past that we're still paying off the debt on.
Okay.
For example, the Rolling Green property, we kind of view that as a bricks and mortar kind of thing because it's
Right.
it's real things, but other people may view it as support. So
Yeah.
kind of some of it is your
I see.
perspective on things.
Just follow up on that, there's a formula though, in terms of percentages that go to each area, correct?
Yes.
And the percentage on the second page has community housing 58%.
So is that bricks and mortar?
Well, the CPA requires, the CPA Act requires a minimum of 10% in each of the three areas.
Which three
You
are
can-
those?
Housing, historic preservation, and open space. Yeah.
And but they do allow for recreation
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and
But
then
you don't have to
some
have
for
you don't have-
administration.
Sorry, you don't have to have a percent
Just
for
for
recreation.
Okay, so follow up on what Anurag said, so you're putting quite a bit of that into community housing.
This year, I think if you look historically, there's kind of an ebb and flow based on the proposals that come before us. I think if you look at last year, there was a lot for recreation, for example, Groff Park. The North Common is, part of it is considered recreation, part of it's considered historic preservation. So I think that the trend has been to kind of try to keep things in about equal balance, but depending what comes before us, an individual year might look somewhat out of balance.
So, and actually that would make sense. Over time, there'd be a balance. But when there's a
Ideally.
significant amount of money to be spent in a certain area, you don't want to just dribble that out over 3 years. You'd want to do the project.
Yes, ideally.
Just,
Yes.
just as a note, too, that some of this money was appropriated into a reserve fund for housing, so it's not actually spent yet, it's just designated for community housing. So at a subsequent town meeting or a later town meeting, we can appropriate that money for a specific project if we want to. So it's not actually committed to a specific housing project, it's committed to using for community housing.
Is this the fund that one of the chairs told us about a couple of years ago, that they would like a pot in reserve so that if something comes up between now and a town meeting, they could access that money and go forward with the
That would be the
project?
municipal housing trust, that's different.
Oh, that's something so different. Oh, okay.
You can, under the CPA, you can set up reserve funds for any of the three main purposes, and appropriate money into those reserve funds if you're not spending enough. You have to appropriate a minimum of 10% of what you get to one of the three major categories. Beyond that, you can move money into reserve and the like. I've got two questions
Sure.
related in terms of housing. Amherst Community Connections returned $40,000 that they were allocated.
Yes?
Well, it's a
Okay.
question. I mean, the question is it a going concern? I mean, if it was given a $40,000 grant, it didn't spend it, it's come back and it's now looking for 2.5
So-
times that amount of money.
Yeah, well, so our understanding is they were a little bit more successful than they had anticipated with that first round of funding that enabled them to return the money. But for this next cycle, they again asked, isn't that kind of?
No,
No?
their original proposal last
She
year,
said she
I think
moved
you
people
remember,
out.
had services,
Oh,
support services for the homeless, which is not eligible under CPA. So when we got more information about that, when the contract was signed with Community Connections in the town, we figured out how much was not eligible for CPA, and that got returned.
okay.
That's what
Okay.
the 40,000
That's the
is.
40,000.
Okay.
Oh, okay, so
Thank you
there's
for
no,
clarifying.
there's no support money in this, and the committee's convinced that Community Connections has the staffing to provide the support or has alternative funding to provide the support.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the proposals for Amherst Community Connections, Amherst Community Land Trust,
Mhm.
I think there's a sense of the committee that at some point, I think, well, of course, the committee always changes, so I actually
Mhm.
can't speak for the future, but some of the existing members are kind of like, this is fine to keep it going for a little bit, but at some point, I can't,
Okay,
yeah.
my concern is, having worked in the
Yeah.
field, my concern is that the committee's cautious about this stuff.
Oh.
And that any organization that receives funds is a going concern, so we know they'll be able to spend the money appropriately and be there in the future.
Yeah, so
So,
the head of that organization, explained to us about some of the people are moving out of the system quicker, which means more people are being served in this first round than she had anticipated. So, we feel like there's some of us who want, permanent housing for the homeless with support services paid other ways too, and that's the most effective way to deal with this problem, but for now, we don't have that.
Yeah.
And so they kind of fill a gap, and it is accepted, this program, the way it's been set up under the CPA Act, so.
Okay. The other question I have is, the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust had requested $500,000 and they were awarded $150,000. What was how was that decision made to cut that back?
So,
And it's okay to say we just don't have the money.
well, no, I mean, we you could, we could have appropriated money for this, and then some other things don't get it. So often we have kind of, I don't want to say horse trading, but there's, trying to balance all the proposals and all that, and we want to fund, there's a sense of the community to fund these other proposals and to also give the Amherst Municipal Trust kind of a good chunk of money to get started. That's what they, the head of that also said that they would be happy with an amount less than $500,000 because they don't have anything with a real concrete budget to come before town. So we felt this was sort of a compromise in order to kind of take care of the housing proposals and not affect the other areas negatively. And also, we felt it was important to keep about $282,000 in the housing reserve, feeling that this organization is has a kind of a very narrow lens on housing, and we felt by CPA keeping this amount in affordable housing or reserve, because we represent a bigger viewpoint of the community, because we come from all areas, and so we just felt that was, it made sense for CPA to kind of hold some money back and to have our perspective onto anything that comes forward to use that reserve money, instead of just giving it to one organization that, you know,
Okay.
has a strict focus.
Okay, thanks.
To follow up on that municipal trust, according to the paper, it said 190,000 will go toward development and consulting support for the Amherst Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, which is considering a project that would convert the East Street School into affordable housing units. And we just had the staff before us a few weeks ago and we're just reading this in the paper. How does that fit into this, and is that accurate?
Yeah, well, you see right above it, there's the 40,000 for the consulting support, so that's the 190.
Right.
That was one proposal they talked to
Yeah.
us about. I mean, our understanding was that was not a done deal or a sure thing, because there are some significant issues with that building. It's just one thing that they're exploring.
I think it's under consideration, but I don't think there's been any
Yeah.
decisions made on that.
Yeah, our understanding is there's no formal agreement, there's nothing, it's being looked at as a possibility.
Okay, because this was just, I think, approved by the select board in terms of how that East Street School, or property, municipal property. The question I would be asking, is this going into municipal housing that the town would then own and administer? But you don't know that because they haven't brought that to you.
Yeah, right, and I guess
So,
that could, the
that's-
nature of their projects could be run the gamut, right? From things that are administered by the town to somebody else, I guess.
I'm not an expert on the housing trust,
I'm
but
not
I think
either.
they're based more on bricks and mortar,
Mhm.
building
Mhm.
affordable housing units for
That's
the
what they're
town.
trying,
Right,
that's what they're trying to do.
right.
And the East Street School is one area of focus, but they have a lot of other areas of focus. I think they're also talking to Valley CDC about enhanced SRO, single room occupancy
Oh, that
building,
one.
and
Okay.
they're, talking about the shelter that we have up in North Amherst. So they have their fingers in a lot of pies, and they're trying to cover all the housing needs of people who don't have enough money to.
I guess the question is, though, is that property then going to be the town's property, or is it going to be something that's purchased and then we get property taxes from it? And that's probably not a discussion for tonight, but if you want to quickly answer.
So that depends on what route they choose to go. They could choose to go the route of putting out RFPs to seek a developer for that property, and then perhaps eventually turn it over to the developer. But they don't really know exactly what they're proposing to do. I am going to put my head on a block or neck on the line or something and say that I don't think they intend for the town to own it and operate it, because that is a big commitment. And
That's
currently
what
we
we're
don't have
thinking.
the staff to do that. So I'm imagining that they will think someone else can do that better, but I'm not sure.
Okay, yes.
However, it's still CPA funding, so even though it's transferred over to the housing trust, because of the source of money coming from CPA, they are still held to the regulations that, that CPA has on the funds being used, and there is housing restriction, affordable housing restrictions still that will be imposed.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions on CPA?
Just a
Yes.
quick question on Groff Park. How's that coming along? So, is that started yet, or?
There is, no, not any construction,
Construction,
nothing
right,
like that,
nothing
no, I
happens,
mean,
okay.
it's,
I noticed that none of them.
yeah, I think
Come on.
the RFP has been
Yeah.
out there, and there's gonna be some,
Is there any timeline on when things might? Just
I think they were hoping the fall,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's a little sketchy, because it's a big, it is a big project.
yeah. Cool.
So there's, I'd say I get confused with the recreation working group and the whole Groff Park thing.
Mhm.
I think the last date I saw was 2020, which I have
For
not relayed that
completion.
information to my granddaughters yet,
Oh.
because they will be very unhappy.
Yeah. It's before that.
Because they're missing the wading pool.
I know. Yeah.
The town has hired a consultant. They've hired Berkshire Design Group to do the design for that work, and they're starting to do the survey. And I think the intent is that they will get started with construction late summer, early fall.
That would be great.
Perhaps some of the construction will lap over into next spring, but much of it will be done this year.
Yeah, and I think there is a upcoming public, I don't know if it's public forum or
Mhm.
public hearing coming up, so that's another opportunity for people to
People that, yeah, find
to
out.
weigh in. Yeah,
Yeah.
so LSSE got I forget how many people we got surveys and information from about that. So we know people want that desperately.
Well, there's a huge number of kids that live in proximity to Groff Park, as I can attest, because I see
Yes.
them all the time.
I know.
It's a real valuable resource
Yeah,
that
that
needs
was
to be
real. Yeah.
moved along. So
Motivation for
thank you
us,
for,
yeah.
thank you for the work.
So I don't know if you want. So historic preservation is. Do you want me to go through the other areas, or you,
I
you
think
don't care?
what they've done before is just kind of highlight
Yeah.
what you're going to do this year and,
Yeah.
and how much you're planning to
Yeah.
spend.
So you can see the three proposals for historic preservation. Those are. I think those are pretty.
What page are you
What,
on?
is this?
Page
Four.
4.
Okay,
Page 4.
okay.
So those were, I feel like they were pretty straightforward. The textile collection, that was funds were approved last year for that, and this was to help, additional funds we needed to help complete this. The farmhouse is just related to, to that, the North Amherst Community Farm. It's mainly focused on the outside of the building. And then the Amherst Historical Society is about the boiler, and that we view as a real necessary item to fund.
So,
I thought the community farm proposal was particularly well put together. I appreciate
Yeah, that had a lot of community support, not just from the historical
Mhm.
society folks.
No.
So
They did a nice job putting the proposal together.
any questions on that? And I think open space is pretty straightforward, and recreation.
Yeah,
Do you want to just take us through this page?
sure.
Which is page 6, because that's the one you'll be looking at. You have the columns above.
Yes, right. So you can see each of the areas for this year, and you can see if you look under total recommended FY19, it says percent of total allocated by committee. So you can see it meets the 10% goal. Recreation isn't required to have 10%. And then, like I said before, other years you're going to see those percents differ.
Can you explain? Didn't understand. I looked at this online too. What's the green
This
highlight?
is the debt requirement, the debt funding.
Oh, it corresponds to that.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so these were all projects that have been proposed and approved by.
And they're in the
town meeting.
different years of the proposal.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for this year then,
So anything new is kind of in that white, and we went through community housing.
So everything above the green was outlined on the previous page. Just
Yeah, the
talked
previous
about, right?
pages, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's where you can find that little synopsis of each one.
But the total of 1.67 includes the green and the white?
Yes, and it includes the set aside for the housing reserve.
Do you want me to explain the financial?
Yeah, I did
part of that?
understand that.
So, it's all estimated just like the operating budget, and you can see, the estimated 630.18 fund balance, so I'm estimating that we're gonna have 207,000 at the end of, fiscal year 18. Then we have the reserve for 375 that was reserved last year, so that's a figure. Then the local surcharge is estimated at 930,000, and then the state match we're expecting to come in at 17.2%. So you see the purple, and over to the right of that purple it says new revenue. That's what the DOR considers new revenue. 10% of that amount has to be allocated to the three main categories. And if it's not, then we would have to, if we only had $1,000 for historic preservation this year, we'd have to put 9,000, we'd have to put 10% total into a reserve for that. It's regulated that way. So we have a total request, and all the green is previous borrowing authorizations. So we have to pay our debt. That comes right off. So that's what the 320,843 comes, is all the CPA debt. And if you were to look at the capital plan summary report, it'll show CPA debt, and it should be that same number. Might be off $1. It's always off $1, doesn't matter.
Which one of those numbers? The
320,843.
Let's
That's
see,
all debt.
28, 44.
It's off your end here, paper, but not on ours.
Oh, you don't have it on there?
No.
Yeah, the size is put on the landscape.
Oh, did it come down here?
Yeah.
Where did you?
Oh, because of the report.
Okay.
Sorry. If you totaled it up, Sharon, it's 320.
so these which
The
number?
green numbers.
Oh, all the ones
The
for
green
the
highlight.
deck. Okay,
Right.
yeah, okay. So 320.
I'll send you this,
Okay.
so you have it all.
What was it, 320?
843.
So that would be 6840 plus 12540 and so on in the green, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So of that 1.672 million that we estimated, 375 of that was reserved for community housing. So what Jim was saying earlier is they use some of that money to help support community housing. But I don't think you applied it to any specific project, it was just for all the categories. And I think it was like 92,000, if you do
Yeah.
the math and subtract from
Yeah.
75, that's where we're at. So
And so,
realistically, we have $282,601 left after this.
Set in reserve. Right.
It's reserved for housing. Did it confuse everybody more?
Housing is the most confusing area, I'll have to tell you. It's
but
never
just-
straightforward.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It looks like everything was funded at the request amount, except for that one we talked about earlier, right? That was funded, that was requested, the Municipal
Mhm.
Housing Trust for 500 was requested, and was funded 150, right?
Yeah.
I don't think all the projects were,
there
Well,
was,
there was one
one
that was not approved for the North Amherst Library.
Oh,
so not
okay.
everything gets funded.
Oh, I see,
And
because
so it doesn't make it on our, because
I would just, that doesn't, you don't reflect that on this sheet.
No.
These are only the.
How would that show up?
just in our minutes, I guess. I mean, because it's just not,
It's not something
not
that
an-
goes to town meeting for
Yeah.
appropriation, so unless the CPA committee recommends it, no one at town meeting could stand up and add to a CPA appropriation. So it would make no sense to have it be part of discussion when there's nothing you can do about it.
Except
That's how
you can take something off the list.
You can always reduce what a CPA recommends, but you cannot add to it.
Right. And that's right in our write-up for the CPA funds. That's a great
Because
committee to
I
be
saw
on.
that somewhere. When I looked at the report online, it
It says,
indicated,
mhm.
Well, it was one of the
That was
proposals, but
requested.
I think the committee
but it
decided
didn't
that
come in this
they
report.
didn't feel they
I
were
see.
ready for it at this point in time.
Well, I can understand, but it just would be curious that if there were like 35 requests and only 6 were approved, it might be interesting to know what the others
Well,
were. I'm just throwing
yeah,
those
well,
numbers
I mean, last year
in
we
terms
had,
of a report.
well, last year we had a proposal from Hampshire County something,
Courthouse?
the courthouse for some
Huge amount?
huge amount, and we just declined to even entertain it.
Right.
Okay.
You know, and I think that's, you know, again, it's reflected in our minutes, but I think we just need to land on this, what we're putting before you and putting before town meeting.
Further questions? Okay, well, thank you very
Okay,
much
thank you
for
very
coming.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, and so the next petition articles, and Jerry Weiss is here for a zoning article, and Chris and Rob are here. They've heard it, and
Do you all have copies of the article?
I would have, I think mine are separated into different
Unless it's in the
pieces.
town warrant.
It is in the town warrant.
Yes,
today.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know you had a copy of
Oh,
it.
yeah, what's the warrant number?
There's no numbers.
It's not really a,
The only
It's a
idea
draft.
We don't do
Right.
numbers anymore. No, we
Is there
don't
a
do
page?
numbers.
No, but they have page numbers.
There's
Oh.
page numbers,
Well, page numbers, right.
because I'm gonna refer to, I just need to.
But we used to put numbers in, and then we had to change them.
Page 30?
there are two inclusionary zoning articles. One is brought by the planning board and one is brought by Mr. Weissel.
This is this one,
This
I
is
said all
Weiss.
is 30.
page 30.
30.
Page
Page
30.
30.
Page 30, good.
Okay. Actually, yours isn't a very long zoning article. Usually they're 4 or 5 pages, right?
Well, one thing I did was only include the parts I'm changing.
Oh, that's very helpful.
So it's not a very long article anyway.
Yeah.
The original Article 15 isn't that long, but it would have been longer if I put everything in that existed and highlighted what I was changing. This has the highlights of what I'm changing.
Okay. So would you like to explain this to us, please?
Can I just stop for one second? I'm taking the minutes, I forget, is your first name with a G? Sorry.
No, not a problem.
And I printed my comments and they're on my printer at home. So I have it on here and I'm going to be referring to it.
Attack.
I can do most of it by heart because I made this presentation 4 or 5 times. The main purpose of bringing this forward was to increase the chances of inclusionary zoning being applied downtown. If you all know the original Article 15, do you want me to explain it all, what it is?
Yes, please.
Would that be helpful?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, do I know you?
Yeah, Joe, Jane,
Hi, Joe.
Finance Committee.
Oh, do you know everyone else at the table? I'm sorry.
I think I know everyone else at the table, somehow I don't.
Okay, except you, okay.
Very well. So the original Article 15 was brought in 2004, does that sound right? 5. That's pretty good. For me, that's spot on, 1 year. And it was passed by town meeting, and the heart of it read, this is section 15.10, all residential development requiring a special permit and resulting in additional new dwelling units shall provide affordable housing units at the following minimum rates. And then there's a little table of what those rates would be. Basically 10%. At some point it goes up to 12%. Can't remember the threshold. You know the threshold?
I think it's over
26.
20, over 20 it goes up to
Yeah.
12.
Yeah, okay. So then we go fast forward to 2000, I believe, 9, when developers brought a proposal to the planning board for what is now
Owen Place.
Boltwood Place, thank you. Proper names. Boltwood Place. Boltwood Place had a proposal for 13 units and 12? 12, excuse me, 12.
You're close.
I'm close. I'm going to be very close to it. And
Big 12.
if you read what we call the plain language of Article 15, a special permit, then it should have been included because Boltwood Place received I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 special permits. Mr. Tucker at the time said that's not what it means. It means a special permit for use, which wasn't required for Boltwood Place because it was allowed by right. Therefore, the planning board agreed with Mr. Tucker and didn't require inclusionary zoning to be applied. That started kind of an unhappy set of events for people who thought it meant a special permit. And it set the stage for the buildings to come, Kendrick Place, 1 East Pleasant, and soon Spring Street. So none of those buildings, even though they all got special permits, required inclusionary zoning to be included because none of them needed a special permit for use. They're all by right. It's something that has bothered me since 2009. It's bothered a lot of people. Other efforts have been made to change this interpretation. Nothing has changed. It's remained on the books the way it is. And then when I decided I'm going to bring it back, I did some research and noticed that under that interpretation, inclusionary zoning could never be used downtown because all apartment buildings and multiple use, what's the?
Mixed use.
Mixed use. Thank you. That's why I like to read from my notes because I don't make these mistakes when I have them. They're all by right. So even if every building requires a special permit for height or for lot coverage or for building coverage or for setbacks, doesn't matter. It doesn't require one for use. They're all by right. That bothers me. I think downtown's a good place for affordable units to be. So that interpretation has cost us, the town, 26 units to date. That would have been kicked in had a special permit been the prevailing rule. Any arguments with anything I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It turns out that the planning board, the current planning board, I didn't interview older planning boards, didn't know that the interpretation was having that effect on downtown. That interpretation would virtually eliminate downtown from inclusionary zoning. So I began working with the planning board, zoning subcommittee on this article. My original one was to go back to the very plain language of a special permit, meaning any special permit for a building would kick it in. I worked with them. We came to a compromise. I eliminated setbacks from the equation. Eliminated the ancillary uses like signage and outdoor dining or music, those sorts of things, so that it's special permit for use, and you'll see it in front of you, or for dimensional changes that go beyond what's allowed by right, such as height, lot coverage, or building coverage. And that got some support, I believe, from members of the zoning subcommittee. And then they began to create their own, which is also in there. They added some flexibility to it in the way of adding payment in lieu and or the creation of off-site units, with a stipulation that 50% of the affordable units would have to be on-site, and the other 50% could be on-site or off-site or payment in lieu. That's what their proposal is. I like their proposal because to me, more flexibility is great. When I've spent a fair amount of time on the Mass State website, Smart Growth site, and they talk about what's good about inclusionary zoning. They recommend having incentives and flexibility. So it seems like a good idea to add some flexibility. The one incentive that's built into this is, there's 2 incentives built in. One is that the building must require a special permit. I'm starting to call different towns and cities in Mass, and Brookline and Cambridge don't have any stipulations other than if you have X number of units, inclusionary zoning kicks in automatically. Cambridge is 10 or more, Brookline is 6 or more, with or without a special permit. So there's already one incentive is you want a special permit, you're gonna have to put in inclusionary zoning units. Second incentive is that we have a tax incentive that we passed some years ago. You guys will have to tell me the date. That's in place, and it's being used by Beacon in their project, and they seem to be happy with it. It gives them tax breaks over a 10-year period, I believe, decreasing amounts of tax break over that 10-year period, and then it is phased out. So that's the incentive, the second incentive. That's kind of the gist of it. If this planning board's article had been in effect, the one that they're proposing had been in effect from the beginning, we would have a minimum of 13 more affordable units downtown and a maximum of 26. But if there were only 13, we would also have $1.6 million in payment in lieu in the housing trust to use for affordable housing. And that's the short. That's my briefer presentation. I have a longer one. That's the brief.
So I just want some clarification, payment in lieu, how do you estimate that?
It's going to be a formula that is.
So what's the purpose of that payment? So a developer could say, well, I'll have none, I'll just pay for them. So
Yes.
Can they say
Yes,
that?
not for all of them, but for half of them.
Half of them.
So payment in lieu will be effective even if they were building them off-site?
No, it's
No.
either or.
Either or?
Either
Okay.
or.
Yeah.
So either they could build a 50% off-site or they could make the payment?
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Every year,
And
the
that money,
payments?
No.
No,
So
one
one
time
time.
payment.
One-time
Yeah.
payment.
okay.
And
that
that,
goes into the trust.
It goes into the housing trust.
Right.
Yeah.
and
And
is
it's
the,
I'm sorry, the formula is 3 times the
Median family income. Median family income as
family income
calculated by HUD,
by HUD,
which is calculated annually.
which is
Three times-
$66,600
3 times the median income family per unit
per
is the
year.
payment in lieu?
Yeah,
Okay.
so that's just under $200,000.
So, but they can do it for only half, they cannot do it for more than half.
Only half.
Seems pretty reasonable to me.
All right. How,
So
you're also working on a similar,
So our article is identical to his, except we've added those 2 provisions for payment in lieu and off-site provision of affordable housing. So it's the same.
are you happy with that?
I'm very happy with that because they're using my article and adding these 2 provisions. I decided, I thought about should I be adding these kinds of flexibilities, but I didn't think it was proper for a citizen to be trying to go down those roads. And so I'm actually really glad that they are.
Okay, so who's
Makes it a better article.
So whose comes first?
Theirs.
All right, so if theirs is supported and voted by town meeting, you're moving to dismiss yours?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Was that your question?
yeah, I mean, if there's a happy compromise here, why do we have 2 articles?
Because mine had to be handed in. It was because of the timing. Mine had to go first, and it's in the warrant, and you can't pull it out until town meeting.
We weren't done with our article, so in case we
well,
didn't get finished with ours, you wanted to have this in.
Okay,
Make sure you have
so
something.
the selectmen have set the warrant, so we're basically, right.
Yeah, this is a pretty standard way that it goes with citizen petitions. If there's 2 of them, if the planning board submits their own, the planning board goes first. And if the petitioner likes theirs, they dismiss theirs, and if the petitioner doesn't like theirs, then they argue against it and hope to get to theirs. But I will get up and support theirs. Assuming they haven't made any big changes in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so,
Because I heard the presentation at the Housing Trust, and I told them I was in favor.
so if our role here is to determine if if there is a financial impact. So obviously, if this went through and developers decided they did not want to add affordable housing, there is some financial benefit to the town in terms of they would now have to pay half of whatever it is they're not building, correct? So,
Well, the benefit is that there would be affordable housing in some form, either actual units or money for affordable units in some other way. But the
because you'd still get property tax money from all that.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's what we have to decide. Chris and then Sharon.
So we have heard the argument from some people who have been attending our meetings that if this goes through, then developers will choose to build buildings that don't require any special permits. So they'll build smaller buildings and they won't provide affordable units. So that may happen, and I'm not sure what the financial impact of that would be, but I just wanted to make that statement.
Okay, Sharon.
That was what I was gonna bring up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Well,
Bernie.
builders will build what the market will prompt them to build. So if a smaller building is more profitable, they'll go with it. If a larger building with the subsidized units in it is more profitable, that's the way they'll head. I personally like the idea of having payment in lieu, being able to have some, rather than give the town some flexibility into where the housing ends up. So I really think this is a good compromise. I'm not going to remain unconvinced that inclusionary zoning is an effective way of generating affordable housing, but I'm always happy to be proven wrong.
Well, I could direct you to many sites that talk about how effective it is.
I've seen many sites that say it's very effective, and I've seen an equal number that says it's been a disaster. So who knows? What I like about this, though, again, is because my belief is if we want affordable housing, we're going to have to do some affirmative stuff to create it and point developers in that direction. So giving the town a payment in lieu of creating the affordable housing gives us the ability to go out and point and say we want something here, we want something here. We want to do soft seconds so people can afford existing housing, we want to create some new ones. It gives us a better, more flexibility, more tools.
Is it regulated that you can only charge them half of what it would be, or can we charge them full amount in lieu of?
There's no flexibility on the formula.
The formula is the formula,
Yes.
Yes.
and it's state.
It's in the article.
Oh,
It's not stated, it's
It's not
something
stated.
that we're proposing.
well, what if we just said you'll pay the full cost of what those units would be in lieu of taxes, in lieu of building?
That's what they're doing.
You could do.
No, they're saying
They're cutting it in
50%.
half.
They're saying
50%.
you have to
right?
have
No,
two.
no.
50% of a different number. It's a 50% of total housing required, affordable housing required. Half of those, you can say we're going to pay 3 times the median income for those.
And the
And so
other
you
half,
don't have to.
the other half you build on site.
Other
Oh,
half
you
you have
have
to build
to.
on site.
You
Well,
have to
that's-
build
So-
half
so-
on
Right, so I thought your question was, is it possible that they just have no on-site and pay,
No, they have to have half on site.
because that's what's written here.
Yes.
Right, but that's not a state,
No,
No,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
a town
right.
thing.
And I
So
think that
we
was the
could say
question.
100%.
That was the question.
Okay.
You
If we
could say
chose to.
100%
Okay.
on site. Yeah.
That's,
Yes.
that's the question.
Some
Yes.
towns have 100% on site. Some have this off-site allowance. Some have payment and payment in lieu. Every town can create their own. There are guidelines that the state recommends.
Okay.
The state recommends as many incentives and flexibilities as you can put in.
Janice.
Did you say that the payment in lieu would go to the housing trust?
That's not specified in the language of this bylaw, but the intent is that that would happen. That's the entity that the town has available to receive this money right now.
And in line with that, do those payments that go into the housing trust from the in lieu of payment, do they have to be allocated back to some sort of subsidy for,
They would
For
have to be
housing?
used for affordable housing.
they have to be used?
They
for
have to
affordable,
be.
Right. Is everything in the housing trust go towards, like, subsidy towards housing?
I think
Or
so.
can it be used for,
It has to,
is there wider discretion on that money?
it's for housing for low-income
Just
people.
all low income?
Yeah.
It's all affordable housing, as far as I know.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
So, I'm just trying to understand this. If hypothetically it passes the town meeting,
Mhm.
when does it become effective?
At the conclusion of town meeting.
At the conclusion of town meeting, it'll be effective.
Is this something, though, the Attorney General has to look at?
Probably.
So that'll take a while.
Mhm. It usually takes 90 days after the close of town meeting to hear
Okay.
back from the Attorney General.
Okay.
And was there any history, any sense of like what kind of, is it a slam dunk or is it something that could be questioned by the, probably will be kind of opposed by the people who would oppose it, because they're always opposition to
Always.
anything. So, so even if the town meeting passes, the Attorney General has the right to say, no, this doesn't really meet the state
It doesn't
requirement.
meet the state requirements, but we did have it reviewed by our town council last Friday
Yeah.
at the warrant review, and he didn't see anything wrong with it.
If you read the other ones around the state, it's a pretty soft-sided one.
Okay.
Because, like I said, ours gives the developers a way out by not asking for any special permits. And most towns, there's no way out if you build.
So is there's precedence for stuff like this in other
Oh,
towns? Right? So the other question was, this is not retroactive, is it?
No laws are retroactive. I
Zoning
think.
isn't retroactive.
It's like jack-
Good try.
I wish.
That could be like, we need the money.
Like 10 years retro.
I wish.
Okay, further questions? Yes.
Yeah, I'm taking the minutes and I'm
Yes.
totally confused.
Okay.
I don't understand anything of what we just talked about. 'Cause frankly, I don't. I mean, I missed the meeting where maybe you discussed the previous article. I don't understand it. I don't understand
Want me to explain
the
it?
difference between what your proposal is doing for. The only thing I understand is you want to do something different if Article 15 isn't passed. If Article 15, or the first article is passed entirely by the town meeting, you'll withdraw yours.
I'll dismiss
So I
it.
don't understand the differences. Now, I don't want to take everybody's time. Maybe we can talk
Can I-
about
can
it
I
later.
try
but
this
I
real
just don't. I
quick?
think we
You
can
can let.
explain that.
Can I try real
Okay.
quick?
Sure.
Okay, so think about Jerry's article is a block A, and think about their article is a block A plus a block B.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So if A plus B, their article, passes,
Yeah.
then A is automatically passed.
Okay.
So he withdraws his.
So he withdraws.
Got it.
If A plus B doesn't pass together, then we'll come to, and then Jerry is going to support A plus B
Yeah.
on the town meeting, from what I hear. And then if, in case A plus B does not pass, then we come to Jerry's article, which is only A. There's no B in it.
Yeah.
And the B is the incentives they're kind of developing for the developers.
It's what?
The incentives that we just talked about that you can build only half the required number of units. The other, so the B, what is in the B?
Yeah.
In the B, so A or Jerry's article and A in their article is exactly the same,
Okay.
right? The B, which is not in Jerry's article but only in their article, has simply more fleshing out of incentives for the developers
Okay.
when they come through to build these things,
Mhm.
right? And Jerry's supporting that too.
Yeah.
I think it's better. I think their
So-
article's better than mine.
I can explain it to you afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, so
all right, that's fine.
That's not,
I don't
so
understand.
yeah,
That's
just,
okay.
yeah.
I understand the A and B concept, but I don't understand the detail was just discussed. That's what I don't
I
understand.
can explain it.
And so we'll talk about it later. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, I thought I'd try.
Okay, no, I understand what you said.
But Sharon will explain the B
That'd be
later.
good, so I don't want to take
That's
everybody
great.
else's time.
Well, and the article itself.
Yeah, that'd be fine. 'cause
I think what we,
understand.
what what we seem to have is a better product and more flexibility, so that's a good thing.
I agree.
That's good. Okay. Further questions? If not, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming, Jerry.
Thank you
and
very much.
clarifying it to 6 of us.
Okay. 3 presentations down. 1 to go, 2 to go, I don't know. Oh, no, we have a public hearing next. 2 to go,
Public hearing on the 11th.
11.
Yeah.
Oh,
It had to change.
like to
I'll
join
explain
oh,
it.
it's been moved. Oh,
Yes, that would be great.
okay.
Then we can all see you.
That's fine.
The Gazette didn't publish the legal.
Then we'll go around. That's fine.
Okay, back to my scheduling nightmares. All right.
And you are Van Kaner.
Correct.
Okay, would we go around and introduce ourselves?
Joe, Jane, Finance Committee. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Chris Brestrup?
Anurag?
Say your name.
Anurag Sharma.
Hi.
I'm Bernie Kubiak, and not in direction.
Sign over to come forward.
Mary Lou Tileman?
Janice Ratner.
Tim Neal, and I'm taking the minutes, and I didn't catch who you are.
It's Van, V as in Victor, A-N.
Okay.
And the last name's Kaynor.
Kaynor. Okay, and what are you speaking to tonight? What are we talking about?
A citizen petition
What?
article.
A citizen petition article. And it's Sharon.
Sharon Pomonelli.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
Yep.
I won't remember all your names, I apologize. There's no quiz at the end. I teach 30 students and I have to write down the parents' names, the kids' names. So
Which
I-
page are we on, folks? Wait a minute.
28.
28, okay.
So
Okay, you
stop
can
me
explain.
if my comments are irrelevant or.
Well, no, they aren't. This is the first time we're hearing this.
Okay, so I appreciate just overhearing.
Oh, you do know
I do.
Chris and Bob, okay.
Yes, we've met several times. So, I want to say I admire the complexity of the issues you deal with, and unfortunately, I think this is a complex one as well. Financially, because there are a lot of unknowns. Specific numbers are hard to get for some of this. So my article is to see if the town will vote to amend the official zoning map by changing RO outlying residential to LD low density residential in all areas of town. And I'm adding right here above 420 feet elevation, neither served by public water nor sewer. The rest of the article says some of the reasoning. There are 3 main concerns that this petition article addresses. 1, protection of sensitive wells and septic systems in these areas, since none of the areas talked about have town water and sewer. 2, eliminating or at least delaying the significant expense of extending town water and sewer to these areas. And 3, bringing our zoning bylaws more in harmony with the goals of our master plan. So in a nutshell, that's sort of my reasoning for bringing this forward. There could be a substitute motion, is that what it's called? That Christine has, actually maybe Rob was the author of that, no?
The other Rob.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Rob Moore.
So another Rob. So the alternate motion achieves very similar goals in a totally different way. It wouldn't be changing zoning. So that's interesting to me. I'm discussing with neighbors right now who support my article whether this would be acceptable to us.
May I interrupt just
Yes,
for a minute?
sure.
It wouldn't be changing the zoning map.
Sorry, it wouldn't
It
be
would
changing
change
the zoning.
the zoning,
Okay.
without the zoning map.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for clarifying. So I know if that's confusing, I
That
can.
is
I can-
confusing.
Well, yes,
So-
that is
so can I-
confusing. Maybe after you explain yours, we can go back and
Yeah,
have Chris explain
sure.
that.
So I'll try to be brief. I can go on into detail if you have questions about any of the things I mentioned here. So the first sort of overarching concern my neighbors have had recently is that a farm that's been that has the oldest house in the northeast corner of Amherst. It's my mom was a historical researcher, and she pins it at 1709, the Reuter property. And there are 9 properties older than 1850 on the Market Hill Road, Flat Hills Road area. So it's not a historic district per se, but we have farms that have been farmed there for hundreds of years. And one of them went up for sale this past summer, and a neighbor with a developer has proposed to buy it and make 7 building lots on this less than 8-acre farm. So the neighbors were very concerned about this, and I got 100% of the people I asked. 22 neighbors signed a letter to this developer and neighbor, a friendly letter saying, you know, could you downsize this to be more in character with the area? Because we feel strongly that it's not in the master plan's intent to do this kind of development in an outlying area. We're right near Leonard and Shutesbury, a quarter mile from the Atkins Reservoir. So that was sort of the seed for this article. It's something I've been interested in for years. I was involved in the master planning process 8-9 years ago, and that document, you know, certainly has conflicting information in it, conflicting interests, but not many about the outlying areas being developed heavily. That is not something that is stated anywhere that I've found yet in the master plan. Exactly the opposite, and I have quotes if you'd like to. Well, I'll just send one piece of paper around with some of the quotes if anyone's interested. I have a couple of them. So the zoning has not changed in the outlying areas since this master plan, and yet the master plan asks us to look at that, and we haven't in 8 years. So I, as a citizen, have sort of forced the issue by bringing this forward. So that's the background of my interest in doing this. The specific problem in our area, and the reason I limited it to above 420 feet elevation, is that we all are above where the town water tower can reach. So in order for our area to have water and sewer, there would need to be either a system of pumping stations or a new water tower up higher than our current one. So I asked Guilford Mooring about his concerns about this development back when we were last January. And he said, I said, or is it beyond your purview? Because he deals with town water and sewer, not with septic so much and wells. And he said, he said it's okay to use his name in this. His answer basically was, I didn't say I wouldn't be concerned. It's not my purview, but there have been some problems with wells up near the reservoir. In the drilling of wells there. I don't know the details yet. He also thought a hydrologist should be hired to see if this development of 7 lots with 5 new wells would potentially cause a problem for the neighbors. So a hydrologist has been hired. They gave a report to the Zoning Board of Appeals because we've gone to those meetings for flag lots, which are the only way we can slow down this development is to ask questions about the flag lots being appropriate. So there's where we are today. That process is on hold until town meeting votes on this article, because the Zoning Board of Appeals needs to hear from town meeting before they can go forward allowing 7 lots in this 8-acre parcel. Any questions so far?
Yeah, just those 7 lots, are they already, has the development already started for them, or?
No, it's a little bit confusing because the Zoning Board of Appeals is considering them. I have maps of those 7 lots, several of them. So and yet the house is back on the market. So I think we understood there was under contract when we first went to the Zoning Board of Appeals meetings, and yet then we saw this Reuter farm back in the paper for sale. So we actually are scurrying to find people interested in buying it ourselves, and there is some interest in a farmer buying it. So it's possible that this would become a moot point for that farm, but it's not a moot point for our community because we feel like we have other vulnerable properties in the area. As a matter of fact, over 50 acres are for sale right now, advertised as prime developable land in Amherst, the most acreage available in Amherst. So that's happening now, maybe partly because of my article, I'm not sure, but development is an imminent thing in our area, and it's, in my mind, not appropriate for the rural areas to have 3/4 acre lots where we have wells and septic especially.
Okay,
Yes.
just to be clear, so this property, is it above this water?
It is.
Okay, it's above, okay, so, just explain that again, so that would mean that there would have to be a well drilled?
No, sorry. So this is above where town water can reach.
Right,
So
in
this
order
is
to
a-
get the town water up there,
So in order to get the town water up there, we either need a new tower,
new tower,
which would mean getting land. It would mean spending, I mean, I've been looking up prices. You know, one little town of 2,000 people, their water tower costs $1.25 million. And then the infrastructure and land acquisition and easements, you know, all sorts of complications to that in this area.
so what was the developer's concern? Was the developers like, that's, because they would have to deal with that, right? So if they developed this land, they would have to figure out a way to.
No, because they can drill individual wells.
Oh, they can.
Sorry.
Okay.
So out in the outskirts and in towns that don't have water towers,
Gotcha, okay.
people have to drill wells or dig wells. Dug wells are notoriously go dry, as one neighbor has had happen, and drilled wells are much
Got
more
it. Thank you.
steady.
That's exactly what I needed. Thank you.
I'm seeing this as a neighborhood dispute that is going to impact a large amount of property in town because some folks who have already settled in, they want to see further development in their neighborhood. My question is, why, if these lots meet Title V, and Amherst has a process where you have to have a separate hearing, I believe, for each well that's dug. It's not just, you don't just file papers, you have to have a hearing in front of the Board of Health, right?
I'm not sure what that procedure is.
Well, okay, but you do. So we're very careful about it, and these lots would apparently meet Title V requirements for well and septic. So the assumption that they're gonna need public water and sewer is an assumption. It's not a given. And wells can work fairly well. They can last forever. Most of the time when you install a septic system, you're required to show that you can replace it. You have the property and the space to replace it within more than 100 feet from the well. So it really sounds to me, to be blunt about this, like you're taking a neighborhood dispute and using a imagined concern, because the town wouldn't necessarily have to pay for an extension of the water and sewer system. There are other ways to do that. Okay. So the developer could pay it, or you can assess betterments. There's a bunch of other ways that the town could get that water and sewer system paid for. So it really sounds to me like you're taking a neighborhood dispute, you can impact a significant amount of properties. I don't know if this 420-foot elevation only affects North Amherst or if it affects South, because I haven't seen any maps.
I've got maps, so
I'll
finish if
you know, so I'm I'm one of the bigger tree huggers around. But my belief is, if you like the view, you better own it. If you don't want development in your neighborhood, you better own the property. Don't try to use zoning or the zoning process to box other people out after you've landed.
Well, as someone who bought property in Amherst in '63 on a piece of farmland that was perked and was supposed to, actually the builder put in double leaching field, and in a year it all surfaced. So it depends what the soil is, where this property is, but the town then came up with a sewer line
That's what
because they couldn't do anything else.
that's what Title V is all about.
Yeah, but I'm saying so that it isn't just, well, maybe it'll happen. It very much could, depending on the soil. So, but I don't know if this has been perked, if we've looked at this, and how far out, the 400 above something goes. But it is expensive for the town to put in sewer, even if they don't put in water. And water, as they point out, has to be far enough from septic fields. So the big issue here, though, for the Finance Committee is what is the financial impact of this? And if there is none for us to deal with, then it's not something we take a position on. Chris?
I don't think there would be a requirement for the town to put in sewer and water, because as Mr. Kubiak said, if the property's perked properly and they follow all the Title V regulations, there's no reason to think that those septic systems are going to fail. So they can exist there with their well and their septic system. The rules have changed with regard to septic systems since 1963. Yeah.
But they did perk it, you know, and it looked like it was great, but the soil turned out to be clay later. So it's a tough one, but anyways.
Can I ask, I may be the only one, but I'm having the same issue that you had with the last article. I'm not understanding this.
Could I go?
Good.
Sure,
Because
go
I
ahead.
still don't
So may I
understand
ask
this
you
one
a
at all.
question, just a very basic question?
Go ahead.
Okay, the basic question is, so there was one property on it, and they want to sell it, and so now there's a development possibility over there of putting 7 properties on it. And then one property was getting water, sewer through their own septic system and water through wells.
No, sorry.
How is the property getting water?
All of the 7 lots in this proposed property would have their own.
No, right now what's the situation? How is the current property getting the?
There are 2 drilled wells on the property. There's a kennel there, so there's a
Okay.
drilled well for that kennel. And there's either a dug well or a drilled well, and I couldn't find that well.
So they have 2 wells over there
2 wells currently, 5
And-
more proposed.
and one septic system, right?
Yes, but the future lots would need their own septic
Their
system.
own, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So-
So you go from 1 septic system to 7,
That's correct.
and then you go from 2 wells to 7 wells,
Yes.
right? I mean that's
If it's all approved. The zoning
Yeah,
board of
if-
appeals
if-
have not
sure,
approved the
sure,
5
sure.
wells.
So the other question is, so and the way you are, it's kind of interesting how you are, because what catches my attention is that you are saying a particular height or altitude,
Yes,
you know, like 400 feet
yes.
above or whatever. And to me it seems like that seems to, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm understanding that as if that altitude is chosen to qualify these properties. What is the basis for choosing the altitude?
So I went to the town IT department, and they were kind enough to just pretty quickly get this map made. So this is the area of town that's above 420 feet. This is the Holyoke Range, so obviously there's some mountain there. This is the northeast corner where I live. Market Hill Road and Flat Hills Road are right in here. East Leverett Road also has a little bit of steep hill that goes above 420 feet. 420 feet is the limit of our current town water system to supply. That's
Okay.
it's nothing to do
So,
with this
so
development.
officially, like so if you are the town will, so all the
So it just makes it more expensive, sorry,
That's
to
fine.
extend water and sewer. Because if you extend sewer, you can't do that without extending water. Because you need, if you have wells, you need recharging of those wells, which means septic systems. You need to put that water back in the ground, or you have problems with water tables lowering.
And
This
so
is
I need
hydrologist.
some clarification on that.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing different things. You were saying the town will be required to provide the water, and I'm also hearing that town is not required.
Well, so required is a funny term. You'll start to see failing wells if you do sewer and no water. And that's proven. I can show you
If you
evidence
do
of that.
sewer and no water,
Yes. In
Right.
other words, if you don't do water, you have drilled wells, and then you have the water coming out, going into a sewer, going downtown, and taking that water away from the aquifer. You need to have, if you have a well, in order to have it sustainable, you need to also have a septic system which recharges the groundwater. So this is what the hydrologist has said. So this is not me.
you are saying, okay, so for a layperson,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand you. Are you saying that you cannot have the well and the septic on the same property at the same time?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so confusing. You need that. You can't have a sewer and a well on the same property without having potential problems with
But
a well.
why are the town? Where will the sewer come from? Will the town?
Well, there are 27% of properties at High Point Drive that have Board of Health failures of septic systems. For instance, Market Hill Road has 29%. This was back from 2006.
Failed septic
2003
systems.
or
So the
six.
town is required to provide sewer to
No,
them?
but they have a system, the DPW has a system of rating the need for the next place in town that needs water and sewer, or sewer, if there's already water. So they have a rating system. One of the factors is how many septics are failing. And residents are very upset if it costs them $20,000 or $30,000 to keep replacing their septic systems. So I don't know about your neighborhood, but if enough neighbors complain, the town feels obligated to do something about it.
The town feels obligated.
Amherst Woods just got done. It was estimated at $2.7 million in 2005. It cost around $4 million. So it's not a cheap thing to do. That's what Guilford Mortgage
Okay,
said.
so this is what I want to understand, that the town is, so if the septic systems fail at a certain rate and a certain proportion of the septic systems have failed, then the town is required to provide the sewage line to them?
No, the town has a system of evaluating that information and deciding if resources should be put into that. And then town meeting would decide whether to provide that funding to do the $4 million at Amherst Woods, for instance.
But the town can refuse to do that too?
Yes.
And they did pot line too, I believe, right? It wasn't pot line, they did a sewer down there, because again, they failed. And as you point out, maybe one person can't get it, but there were 24 of us, and we did, and pot line had many, and Amherst Woods. So they do fail, and then they're not required, but the town does, help out.
There is a website, the town has, Guilford Morning put me in touch with that website. This is just one page of a pretty large piece of work about sewer priority. And so this page just shows the percentage of wells failing in areas of town that don't have septic systems. Don't have sewer, sorry. So, if you're interested, it's blown up from a small piece, but circled there is High Point Drive and Market Hill Roads, which do have the highest percentages.
Go ahead, Jan.
If a property has a well and a septic system, is there a minimum or maximum lot size?
There's a distance that you have to maintain between the two.
Is it 100
I
feet?
think it's 100 feet.
But not a particular acreage.
Tim?
I just wanted to bring it back to the petition article. Why change zoning to have this occur?
So the reasons stated on the petition article, but I'm willing to.
But I read the reasons, I understand the reasons, but
Zoning,
why do you have to change it? What happens if you don't change it? Why?
Oh, I see.
You obviously feel being an RO, you can't do what we're talking about, right?
Right. Well,
and you have to make it RLD, and I don't understand the change.
RLD requires about 2 acres instead of 3/4 of an acre. So it would create much larger building lots, not 3 times as much.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
your proposal is to make a larger property so the 7 developments can occur.
For future
Right?
development, including
That's
this.
that's why you're planning.
Yeah, so they would have, instead of 7, they might have 2 or 3.
Okay,
And he's saying that would fit more.
Yes.
okay, that's
Harmony
what
with the
you're trying to
neighborhood.
do. Okay, I just didn't understand what you were
That's, I
trying to do.
understand. I'm sorry it's so complex or hard to explain, and I'll get better at it as I keep going on the boards.
What the theory is, if you force people onto larger lots,
Right.
your septic systems will still fail.
But there'll be fewer.
But they're
fail
fewer,
because there'll be
but you
fewer.
still have the same length of pipe to lay for,
Right.
the point being is that this is sort of snob zoning, an area that folks don't want to see developed.
Okay.
That's not acceptable to say that.
And I guess the other related question, which maybe isn't the question to you, but to the planning people is, does this have unintended consequences by doing this? Just to potentially solve this problem, it might raise a whole bunch of other problems.
Yes. So the proposal, and I give the petitioner credit because he is listening to the discussion. He is limiting his article from what it was before. Before it was, very broad. He's excessively narrowed it down to really focus on what he's trying to do. Okay. But it would affect basically the whole northeast corner of the town. Changing all of those lots that are many of which are currently built on. They have houses on them. From an RO zone to an RLD zone, potentially making some of them or many of them non-conforming lots. if they don't already have 80,000 square feet on the lot, if they don't already have 200 feet of frontage, those houses on High Point Drive, on Market Hill Drive, on Flat Hills Road, could become non-conforming, and then anytime you take out a building permit for the house, you might have to go to a special permit. So, ideally, you would not change zoning that where there's already a structure in place.
Okay.
It also takes value away from landowners who own property and have expectations about what they can build on it. They could no longer build what
Current
they thought current landowners would not be able to build as much as they thought they would have been able to build.
Sharon?
Would now be a good place to understand what was mentioned earlier about not changing the zoning but changing the map, or not changing the map but changing the zoning?
So in an effort to make what Mr. Kaner wrote initially, we didn't think was in a proper form to go before town meeting, so in our way of thinking on the second floor at Planning and Inspection Services, we've been trying to think about how to we don't necessarily agree with what Mr. Kaner is trying to do, but how to put it in a form that would cause the least damage or would be able to be accepted by town meeting in a better way. Anyway, so the building commissioner looked at this and he said, well, he's worked in towns and cities before that have zoning regulations related to the issues that Mr. Kaner has talked about, the sewer and the water. And they have said things like, for properties in the RO district, which requires 30,000 square feet, if they're not connected to sewer and water, they must adhere to the dimensional requirements of the RLD, or the 80,000 square foot lot area requirements. So that means that in the future, if a property does become connected to sewer or water, then that property could revert back to using the RO dimensional requirements. So you don't have to change the zoning map. If you change the zoning map, that means that even if these properties become connected to sewer and water in the future, you have to go back to town meeting to change the zoning back again. So by doing this other mechanism, requiring properties that aren't connected to sewer and water to adhere to a more strict dimensional requirement, that may solve some of the issues that Mr. Kaner is expressing concern about.
Explain it. I mean, Title V basically says you need certain soil suitabilities for septic systems, and you need to have a replacement area for the septic, for the leach field, and you need to have your well at least 100 feet away. So if you go from RO to RLD or whatever, you go to a large lot, okay. How do you then put a septic system on that larger lot? If you have to meet the dimensional requirements, you have a lot now that's a building lot at 30,000 square feet. You're now telling people that they have to meet the dimensional requirements of an 80,000 square foot
They
lot?
wouldn't be able to build a house on the 30,000
So-
square foot lot. They'd have to have a lot that was 80,000 square feet and otherwise complied with RLD zoning in order to build a house.
Okay, but that would still, for the folks who own property in the area, there would still represent a change in the value, because their 30,000 square foot buildable lot is no longer a housing lot.
If they had if they had a lot that was not developed,
Yeah, right.
they wouldn't be able to develop it. If they had an existing house on a lot that was 30,000 square feet, that lot would become non-conforming, and whenever they tried to do something, expand their house or whatever,
So there'd
they'd
be a
have to
loss
go
of
to the
value to
CBA.
those people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you explain how you could just put in a regulation and how people would adhere to that? I mean, I don't know where that goes, so that if you say it has to be this size, you know, in order to have septic and well, and it's not in your zoning.
It would be in the zoning. It wouldn't be on the zoning map, but it would be in the text of the zoning bylaw, in where we describe dimensional requirements, Article 6, there would be a paragraph in here that would say essentially what I just said. For lots that are not connected to sewer and water in the RO zoning district, they would need to comply with the RLD dimensional requirements. And there's a table in here. Here's the table, and it shows all of the dimensional requirements for RO and all of the dimensional requirements for RLD. So the RLD is much more, requires much more lot area, more frontage, more setbacks, etc.
How would that work for what you're trying to do?
It solves some things and it creates problems in my mind for other things. I feel like it's unintentionally misleading, because if you look at a zoning map, you'd think, oh, I can buy this property and build a house on it, and it's just, you'd have to read the details to know that you couldn't do that in this particular area above 420 feet. It's like, to me, it's more clear to actually change the zoning and have it on a map. So it just seems more honest to me or something, than having it buried in a bylaw.
Well,
But
you
it would
know,
achieve the goal.
I mean, right, I guess what I would be after is you're trying to achieve a goal, and it's up to people who buy things to research them.
So
And the real estate agent to tell them.
I understand. My other concern about it is it doesn't address our neighbors' concern that the zoning actually be changed, that it's not appropriate, even if sewer and water were there, to develop as densely as this part of South Amherst is, which is RO zoning. That would be allowed. It's already happened up at High Point Drive where we're starting to see problems, and they don't allow that anymore because it's not a good idea to have that tight development with septic and water. So with a subdivision, you can't do this anymore. But just, so it doesn't address that issue, but I understand it achieves the sort of the short-term goal of maybe, stopping. I like a broader article that deals with an issue that is not new to me, but it was thrown in my face by a developer in our neighborhood.
Sharon and then Tim.
Well, it seems like what we have to determine financially is if you cut down, or if you expand the lot size, there's less housing, that means less taxation on either one of those plans, really. And then that balanced against, if there's another now section of town that goes on the sewer and water list, that seems to be really the financial impact that we should be.
Tim?
That was going to be my exact
That's
observation.
There you go.
Well,
But I also did have another question. Your final point, bringing the zoning bylaws more in harmony with the goals of our master plan. What do you mean by that?
I have a handout.
it's dense development in terms town
Density
centers.
Okay.
Is this the
All right.
map?
You're saying more outlying areas need to be less dense.
Direct
Yeah.
quote.
In
It's right
effect.
there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
all right. I don't need to see.
Yeah, that's what the argument.
That's what.
It
That's
says
what your
zoning
argument
should be
is.
reevaluated to
Okay.
reflect this master plan, and every 5 years is supposed to be amendments, and whatever. There are a lot of highfalutin goals in there that seem to be down zoning seems to be that what it's called, is almost never acceptable, and so that's why I'm in a quandary here, because it seems like every board has said you can't do this.
Okay. Yeah, sort of related. Back to the financial question. For this project, we're talking about maybe rather than 7 lots, 1.
No, be 3.
3. Okay, 7 for 3. But Chris said, you said that potentially existing folks might be affected by this zoning. So we're talking about more potential, right?
Absolutely.
Versus a potential large sewer water cost to the town if the town has to provide for that.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's what we're
the
talking
secondary effects.
which is a big question mark.
Yeah, secondary effects beyond these lots.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really what, certainly a part of the conversation. Because we are focused on these 7 lots, or this big lot here, whatever it is. But the implications, the secondary effects on the other locations
Right.
in town. Right, okay.
It's all in this northeast corner. It's RO zoning and above 420 feet. So it doesn't affect the whole upper range. It doesn't affect the little spot near the water towers at Orchard Hill that's above 420. So it's only this northeast corner. But there are many properties that could be developed, including my own. more fully with current zoning. That's why I was asked to provide a list of properties that would be affected. And so there are 395 properties impacted by this.
195?
195, although I subtracted repeat owners and the town of Amherst land, and it got closer to 150. So I've spoken to some of these people, but certainly not all of them. There's widespread concern about the character of the neighborhood. You know, Tom Perrin was willing to sign my letter to the, and Bob Cummings and, you know, Barbara Ford, various landowners who have enough land to do many building lots are at least in favor of the idea of limiting the kind of development that's proposed here.
Chris.
I get it.
So I just wanted to say one more thing, which is that normally when this type of rezoning is done, there's a more public process that goes on, where, you know, we would have public meetings to discuss why we would want to do this or why we wouldn't want to do it, and you know, invite people to comment. And this process that we're going through right now is a much more truncated version of that. It doesn't really allow the public to engage in this. And the planning board has the intent of picking different parts of town and doing planning studies on those parts. We've done a lot of planning work in the downtown. We've done some planning work in the North Amherst Village Center. Cushman area is another area that the planning board is considering looking at. So it hasn't had an opportunity to do that yet. So this is a kind of a short circuit of that process.
And my response would be, it's been 8 years since the planning board was asked to look at these things, and it's not happened. So I know you have lots of things on your agendas, and I'm not blaming any individual. I just feel like the town's 1,000 people gave input into this master plan, and it's not being followed. So that is my only defense for putting it in your face. So.
Further questions? If nothing new to be added, we will thank you, and then we'll have to.
Can I add one tiny
Sure.
more thing? So just one thing that I think is important to realize is I've never heard of a community adding houses and having their tax rates go down. Now, I could be proven wrong, but when I discussed this with Chris, it seems that often when single-family homes are built, it doesn't actually reduce the taxes for the rest of, you know, for overall. I think there's evidence for that, so I just wanted to make sure of that. The other thing is that this would drive property value, the developable value down for properties, but it has also an effect of increasing the desirability of the properties in the area because of the scenic value and the larger lot size. So I understand it's considered snob zoning, and I don't like to consider myself a snob. I grew up here. I'm not a high-income person. I almost have to leave because of taxes, so I'm not doing this for my personal financial benefit. I could sell a building lot tomorrow if I didn't do this.
Well, with all due respect, this is a neighborhood dispute that sort of morphed into a larger one, and it's impacting a larger area.
Absolutely.
And there will be some perceived winners, there will be likely some perceived losers in this. I am sensitive to this because I've seen this type of action take place in other communities as a way of boxing people out. We just had a long discussion about affordability of housing in Amherst. Amherst gets about 90% of its tax revenue from single-family homes. We're all pressed. We have a very high tax rate. I'm a retired individual. I have some difficulty writing that check every year. And I have some difficulty here because you've got a planning board that apparently is willing to work on this. Right? I'm going to say the previous ones had been responsive, but we are short-circuiting the public process. We are short-circuiting people being able to give their input. You've got 13 individuals who signed this. 9 of them live on Market Hill Road, so it's a very small section. Now, I'm not saying that your cause isn't, your concerns about wells and septics aren't real. They are, but I think there is a larger issue here because you've got a lot of properties, you've got a lot of people affected, and they're not going to have a say in this.
I respect your opinion. I don't like this to be hidden, and I'm trying to talk to as many neighbors as I can. I feel like it's urgent for, not just for us who care about our neighborhood, as most people do, but for the town, potential future expenses. And this is in consultation with Guilford Mooring and other people who have told me you need to provide water up there, you need some pretty extensive things.
Well, it is, to
And this is
me,
legal to do.
to me, this is a really tough issue because I understand where you're coming from.
Mhm.
Okay, I totally get what Bernie is saying about the because collectively as citizens of this town, we do pay a lot of taxes. And reasonable development is actually a good thing, but it kind of shows the town is healthy, that people are moving into the town, and it's just kind of. But I understand your point of view that there's a loss with this.
Mhm.
There's a real loss of our way of life, the openness that people are used to, and the quality of the neighborhoods and the communities and stuff like that. I think it's going to change. So I even though I feel obligated as a finance committee member to think about numbers and money and for the town, for the collective, all of us. I just want to say that I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think it's a valid point. It's just very hard to when it bangs up against those numbers and finances and stuff. It becomes a very difficult kind of a thing.
I just ask you to look at all the numbers, because it's not a simple thing, because the future cost of the town.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you. Did you get out on us before we said thank you to him too?
I should point out that the planning board has not
Thank you, ma'am.
reviewed this
Yep.
proposal yet, so they haven't taken a position on it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Was you gonna schedule a hearing on
Was
this?
it, Chris, was it ever
April,
brought to the planning board?
Yeah.
Yes.
it was
They're gonna
brought to
have
the planning
hearing.
board last night. So the
Oh.
planning board heard about it last night, and they're gonna hold a public hearing on it on April 11th.
But no, we had it on our agenda. You had it on that, when you were here the last time, it was one of the items on your agenda that you knew about it.
Oh, we're
Yes,
talking
we
about
did
the
know
other-
about it. I'm saying that Mr. Kaner came and spoke to the planning board last night.
Oh, okay.
They knew about this article prior to
Okay.
that, but he came and spoke to them last night. So that was an introduction to them. And then they're going to hold a public hearing about this on April 11th.
Okay, good.
No,
Sure.
I'm confused. Did the planning
Thank
board
you.
also have an article?
They haven't.
Not about this topic.
Oh, okay.
They just had an article about inclusionary zoning.
Okay. I thought that you also had a parallel one to this.
Yeah, I thought so too.
You got that? Okay.
I had-
You invited us, I think, because Mr. Kaner was going to be presented, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. But I guess we thought you were involved with some of that before too.
Nope.
Okay, that's all right.
All right, thank you.
Hey, thank you for coming and providing information.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Okay. Okay, where's the agenda? Okay, so now we finalize our positions. According to this. Are we there? You're looking at me like this is not the case.
Finalize your positions, like finish voting? I
Yes.
don't have all the numbers yet. We don't have the signed warrant yet.
Mhm.
I feel like we moved a little too fast in some ways.
Well, I'd probably say we do.
I don't have my, if we're gonna get to that, I don't have that sheet with me.
I'm not sure what we
All
do
of the
about
articles are not even on this grid form yet, because I just got this
We have
An
to,
hour
in the finance
before I left
report,
today.
we have to say
I don't
we
have the article
addressed
numbers.
this.
Well, we have some that we
This was
haven't
our
voted
vote,
yet.
And these haven't.
We have the regional
That's
school,
what she needs.
the elementary schools, we have the library. And don't we have, we did the revolving fund. And and the reports on
yes, I guess
committees,
we're
we can
done.
decide we wanna
Yeah,
hear
Yeah, I
that.
think you were absent.
Yeah, that's
And you said that
Could be,
it's just
yeah.
an article, the acceptance of the optional tax exemption, we fill those numbers in later. So we can at least approve of those.
There's no, subsequent numbers that are appropriated. It's all gonna be part of the consent calendar. The acceptance of optional tax exemptions.
Well, we can vote that we're going to do, we will use that and put the numbers in later, because you said that doesn't, the numbers aren't in the article itself.
Yeah.
And it's a regular,
Just don't expect me to explain it, because I'd have to go back and look at my notes. I'm not prepared to do that.
Okay. All right, on our sheet of paper here, are we willing to hear the reports of the boards and committees?
Willing to hear the report.
About the boards and committees, that's usually Article 1, where people that get up and,
Oh,
the
at
finance
town
committee
meeting?
and, yes, and
Yes, we
town-
are willing, I get it.
We are willing, well, I don't get it.
I would say that's not applicable for finance committee, so we
Right.
shouldn't take a position on it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, then we have, well, the transfer, we don't know of any funds, that comes later. And this tax exemption, we'll
That's
have
gonna be
to,
in the consent agenda, right? So
Yeah.
just- And there's no numbers to that.
Right.
but we still have to write it out. Okay, then we get down to, the regional schools total budget. I have that.
Is that different than what is on the sheet?
That's our assessment on the sheet.
Total budget also.
Oh, that's the budget.
Where?
Number eight.
Just below it.
Just above it.
But I don't have a figure in there.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
Why do I not?
So,
This is, I'm sorry, what is,
You can actually play a copy.
oh wait, I have it. I do have it. Okay, all right, do I hear a motion?
What are we talking about?
We're gonna do the regional schools total budget.
31,815, 351.
Right, do you move that?
I move that.
All right, is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay, any questions about the regional budget? Okay, all in favor? Okay, Tim and Sharon, are you voting for this?
I was just trying to write down, doing the minutes, I don't have a sheet with me, so.
Okay, do I have an extra one?
Sorry, I forgot that.
No, I don't.
I'm looking on Sharon's, but I didn't know what I wrote out here. That's okay, we're voting on the regional school, I can go back on my own sheet.
Okay, so all in favor of that then? Is everyone in favor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then that's 7-0.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. How do you erase that? Okay, all right then, that's 7-0. The, let's see, we did not get the, we do have the,
I have the assessment.
okay, do I hear a motion, for the $16,045,304 for the assessment, for Amherst to region?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any question about that? We do not have the formula yet. We'll have to get that later. So all in favor of that assessment?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I will look at that. All in favor of the assessment? Okay, it's unanimous. Elementary schools, $23,227,365.
So,
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Library budget. Janet, you wanna do that? Janice, you wanna do that?
Yeah, I move $2,683,000, $83,069 for the library total budget.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, that's 7-0. And library services, the town appropriation.
I'll do that. I move $1,993,466 for the town appropriation for library services.
So moved.
There's,
Second.
okay, a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Okay, good. Now, revolving fund, is that the 400,000?
Yeah,
We voted it on first.
we've already voted it.
Oh, yes, I see that. The CPA, do we want to do that tonight? They presented. And,
What'd you say we voted what?
We voted the revolving.
yeah, it's very,
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
The CPA funds, is that the final figure then, Sonia, do you think?
That will go to town meeting, yes.
Which is,
There's two parts, part A and part B.
right,
I don't have the report with me.
here, is this it? And then the front is there.
I have, oh, it's in the warrant.
Okay.
But I wanna go sleep.
Well, we have a lot going here.
Is there capital?
It's on page 4. Well, 3 and 4.
Capital for
Okay.
open space borrowing.
So the total for part A would be $955,645.
Where's part A?
It's not on here because I didn't have a chance, I said I was sending.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's not projects?
Yeah.
No, it's not on this grid,
Oh.
It's not on the grid, but it's in the,
It's in the handout.
because I haven't had a chance, I just got this like an hour before I left work today,
Okay.
so I did not have
Okay,
a chance.
I've lost you.
wait, what, and,
I think we should hold on until next week until it
well, because people are gonna start writing this, so I would,
We may not be meeting next week.
right, if we are meeting, I wondered if we could make it a different time, maybe in the morning if people are available.
well, I'm not here next week.
I'm not available for a meeting on Thursday night.
Right. Can,
I
the
can
rest,
meet. I can meet. When do you want to meet?
can we meet it of a morning,
I can do the morning.
a Wednesday or Thursday morning? Anurag, you are back to work, so I don't know what your schedule is.
Wrong. My schedule is for what?
I cannot.
We are down to the wire to vote these articles and to get them written and done. And so, I just wondered if you could, we'd like to finish this up, we'll get
Oh,
all
I
the
can.
numbers.
Can we do this? Can I do it? Do I have the weekend to do it?
No, you have the weekend to do that, we have to meet. Are you free of a Wednesday or Thursday morning?
Oh, in the morning. I could potentially do a Thursday morning.
I can't do it.
8:30?
I can't do a Thursday morning. I can't do next Thursday morning. I can do Wednesday.
I'd have to check my schedule.
Is it on your computer?
No,
Everybody has it on that little pad.
I know they have it here.
Is it broken?
No, I don't. Yeah, I have a different system of keeping my schedule.
It's old school, this guy.
Oh,
Look at.
you need a paper and pen.
But how about
I keep it really well on this.
I can I'm not trying to be coy, but I'll definitely try to meet. If you meet on Wednesday, I'll definitely try to make it. But I
Okay.
cannot
Can you
guarantee
make it Wednesday?
I'm looking at my calendar right here.
There you go.
And I'm open Wednesday morning and Thursday morning.
Okay, Sharon,
I can do Wednesday morning, not Thursday morning.
8:30?
Wednesday morning,
Yes, 8:30 is good. You won't be here.
No,
Can you make 8:30, Janice?
Oh, I think so.
I'm not gonna say.
Sonia, you're
I said
here
that one
anyway.
time before.
Or is it 9 o'clock better?
I'm fine.
8:30.
Wednesday.
Are you babysitting?
No,
Can you make it?
yes.
Okay, and Anurag will try. Okay.
are the write-ups due on the 27th?
No.
What are,
As many as we can, I would like. I know she's saying no, but we still have to read them and get through, and as many of them as we can, where we have the information, please have them done.
General revenue's been done.
Yes, yours have been.
Mine aren't. The
Mine are
write-ups
all
are different
done,
than what
right?
I sent you last week. Is that the articles?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, mine are done. Because you said you're
Okay, and anything I've said to you that we've sent forward, they're done.
Yeah, because you were like, oh, I'm going to forward them off to Sonia. Looks good.
No,
That-
oh yeah, what I tell you is I've sent them on.
Yeah, okay, cool.
So once you get them, it says,
Well, there's more articles. There are borrowing articles for different projects.
I know.
Water, sewer, and
but I have Joe Janes and I have, he has reserve and he has,
The waterworks
Public
and the
safety
public safety
and public works.
Yeah.
and I have Tim's for community services, and I have Janice's,
you
not
have,
all, and I have one of yours.
okay.
I don't have conservation. I sent you what it looks like and what it is.
That's the CPA, right?
No, it's conservation
Conservation.
and development. It's the 1,439,000.
Oh, right.
So,
so the warrant won't get signed until April 2nd. So we won't have final warrant language until probably the 3rd or the 4th.
well, we
Which
can
is
have,
part of the write-ups.
right, but I can cut and paste
Right.
at the
Then-
beginning, but if they do their write-ups,
But then the first mailing goes out, I believe, around the 5th,
right.
and we will not make the first mailing.
No, we won't.
So the next mailing goes out on the 19th, and I think it's due the week before. So
Right.
we do have some time.
We're moving.
So I
Except that we
have,
don't have all the information.
Well, we get all the information we will, that's okay. Well, in the past, we've had that last weekend
Right.
where everybody's gone crazy with
Basically,
trying to get stuff done and people have things to do and
numbers and discussions.
we're gonna try to get as much done as we can. What we can't, that's fine.
So I have a procedural question.
Okay.
So we're
This is
pushing this a little fast, I think, and we're putting out numbers out there, like, 2 weeks, I don't know, how long ago was it? March 1st, we voted all the operational budget, and we had the debt number that was in the existing capital plan that wasn't balanced or finalized
I
yet.
don't think we voted that.
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
So we voted, 2,209,960, that number's changed.
Okay. That
And,
might-
and I have a new number, but I'm reluctant to have you voted again
Till
tonight
later.
because
Okay.
that report is not finalized.
All
So
right.
it's like,
Oh, that's.
I thought we checked with you and you said these were all fine, so,
well, they were.
okay.
But they're not.
But okay, we'll
There's a lot of
wait,
moving parts.
we'll wait till later.
No one decided what capital was gonna be yet.
Okay, because basically you
So
have
when will that be
to,
ready?
say, budget
Huh?
When will
and
that
this
be
and
ready?
then
Well, they just voted,
what I
what
always do
the-
is this language.
the
I
final
take
numbers
from
today, but the text isn't written up yet, and Maria's working on it, so might be ready next
summarize
week.
that.
I mean, I have the number that I'm pretty sure is what it's supposed to be.
So it's
But-
probably-
So do you wanna revote the numbers, or is it
No.
a little bit of a,
Not tonight.
but do you have to revote the numbers?
If they're
Yes, you do,
different.
if they're different, you do.
CPF, now this was.
So
what
we don't
I
wanna
just
do
talked
that.
about today.
And the rest of these numbers are all correct, with the exception of debt service, then,
Well, there's other things that have come up too, where all of our unions have settled their contracts. All those open-ended unions that we voted for, annual, for the budget book, we had a reserve. budget reserve.
And you're gonna move them?
We could move them and then all these numbers would change. I'm holding off on moving them.
That's the
I'm
budget department.
holding
That's the
Maria
budget.
back
That's right.
from moving
That's
them
the
all
budget
out to the departments if they
This
didn't want to,
is
because we already
the-
voted all of these numbers.
that we
Once
just
we
got.
move that reserve,
This is-
then these numbers change.
Yes.
Okay, we can discuss that.
Page 50.
Exactly, so it's like, I think we're going a little too fast, is all I'm saying.
Okay.
And it's basically, this
I
is what.
Oh, so I thought
Okay,
it's this
so,
whole thing.
But you don't have
can we help
to
you
pay
with
for
that?
all those numbers.
So I will figure out what the town manager wants to do.
Oh, maybe
with
this.
Yes.
It'd be
Right,
nice
so it's
to
pretty
have it
simple.
more
So I think
straightforward
this,
and complete.
they fill out all those
And I don't
things.
understand the A and the B.
Yeah, and, right.
It's not a big deal if it stays in the reserve, all town meeting, we move it. It's not a big deal.
Okay, so we have those done and we will get, where is the, we said in the warrant is the language for,
Draft language.
the,
I just want to make sure.
they were there they were there last week and said it was going to be this language? Or was there issues with the language for the assessment formula?
What are we talking about?
I'm talking about the assessment formula.
In school?
For the regional schools, correct. Is that what it's supposed to be, or are they going back and discussing it some more?
I don't know, this is why they don't like to hand out these reports until they've been signed by the, select board,
Okay,
because things will change. So we can't, they're gonna change. I mean, town council's still reviewing it, departments are still reviewing it.
okay.
I was bad and I
Right,
printed
see
it
where-
right, but.
Okay, well, we'll leave what we have, do the ones that we have, and we'll meet next Wednesday.
This will be moot after Tuesday.
Is 9 too late, or 8:30?
At 9 in the morning?
Yes,
That's, I like 9.
all right. Is
Doesn't
that okay with
doesn't
you?
get- doesn't get anything.
And what day are we talking about here?
Wednesday at 9. Is that
Done.
going to, are you going to have anything by Wednesday at 9?
We won't have final language, no.
Will we have
But I will have
any
more
final numbers?
numbers on here, yes. Because a lot of these are a sum of money until the motion. I won't have any of the budget amendments. That'll be last minute to go into the motion. See these articles here. The budget amendments for fiscal year 18. I'm not sure where the article is here. 1, 2, 3, 4 down. 2018. Moving the sums of money around. That's gonna be last minute. Because more accurate numbers. That'll end up in the motion and won't be in the warrant article. Whether we add to the reserve fund, that's probably gonna happen. The amount hasn't been determined yet. The amount of money that's being appropriated from free cash to cover the health claims trust fund run out in deficit has not been determined yet. So those articles will be last minute. The amounts.
Okay, so let us go down then. So we're saying reports and committees, we don't say anything about that. And transfer of funds, we will know about that when?
We're probably gonna dismiss that article because I called Sean last week and this is for prior, bills of prior year.
Correct.
That weren't paid. We usually don't have those. We haven't had those in a long time.
Okay, and acceptance of optional tax, we get that from Dave Burgess.
Mm-hmm.
We can have that for next week, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's for what? That's April when? We're into April already?
No?
No,
Next week is,
March what?
28th is Wednesday.
28th is a Wednesday, 29th
Okay,
is
we'll
a
have that for
Thursday.
the 28th. All right, and then the sum of money we won't have till the last minute? The budget amendments,
No,
that's
those
last
are the ones
minute?
I just went through.
Okay. All right, and then all the rest except the debt service we'll get new numbers for.
Yeah.
All right, and then the Amherst Pelham Regional School District, was that going to change from that meeting?
No,
Okay, so we can do that next week.
you just voted it.
No, not the regional assessment method, we didn't.
Oh, the method?
No, we did not.
It could change, again, it's not signed, so.
But the figures are all based on people signing that. The assessments that
We
went
don't
out.
even have the article numbers on here yet.
I know, but my point is that the regional assessment method they have used to determine
Oh,
our
that,
assessment. So
Right.
my question is, that can be voted next week, correct?
yeah, I'm just trying to find where it is because I know there was a word struck out from it and I'm not sure.
Okay,
Maybe
so
it's
we
not.
can do that on the 28th. I'm just looking at what we need. And then we'll get the regional total budget on the 28th. Do we get the
Sonny,
life?
Sonny, in the back of the first page, are you looking for the assessment?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
what
we-
that,
Method,
yeah.
yeah, back of the first page, second from the bottom.
Okay, they made the correction in that. To the best of my knowledge, this is final language for this.
Well, we'll know next week if you can check that out. All right, do we do the library total budget?
You did it.
I don't
We,
think,
we approved it for
Right.
2,683,000.
okay, I'll get that number.
069.
7-0.
Oh, here it is, this is what I was doing. Okay, so we have that. Community Preservation Act. That is next week. We have enough information here.
The numbers are there.
I know, but they're, I guess I would prefer to have them probably as close to the warrant as, oh, if they're in the warrant.
Right. That's not gonna change, the CPA already voted those numbers.
Okay, so we'll do that next week. All right, what about the capital program?
That's not final yet.
Will that be ready next week?
I'm assuming so, yes.
So,
We voted it this morning, but Maria's working on it, I'm not sure.
right, so what is the coal property? That's CPA?
That's a recension. That's money that was supposed to be borrowed that the deal
Oh,
fell
okay,
through.
yeah, there was a bond rescission. But there's also another coal property on here, so that's why I hesitated for a minute.
Okay, so are we going to have information next week for that?
Yeah, I was gonna update this grid sheet so that it had
Okay.
as much of the information that this warrant did, but I just got this warrant before I left today, so I haven't had a chance to do that.
But you're saying some of this we won't have till the last minute anyway, even after next week?
Yes, the budget amendments for fiscal year 18.
Right, all right, and the Main Street parking lot, next week too?
That's a borrowing article. And I believe that was $450. but
Yes, it is. Next week, we could do that?
I'm, to the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, so those are all that we have now?
No, there's more in here. It's not on the grid because I was just scratching on it.
Okay, all right. So obviously those, they are not on the grid, so we haven't dealt with them, but we could do them next week.
Right, so there is more, yes, but they are not on here.
Okay, so, all right, then we really do need a
You just
meeting
got this.
next week.
Yeah, just today.
Yeah.
If I can get all the numbers finalized by then, yes.
Specifics of last year.
That's my knowledge.
But we can at least
You
get
have the
some.
zero net.
Oh, yeah, yeah, so it looks like
All
they
right.
wanted to rescind
So we'll at least do the sum that
what
we
was
have.
approved at the spring
Oh,
meeting.
good.
And then,
But it's not voted
Yeah.
yet, so it's
Yeah,
not,
we'll do something else.
what I'm saying is they could change.
That's pretty like.
I know.
what do they vote?
The warrant language is not written yet, so things could change up to the last minute. Until they sign the warrant, things change.
Right, right.
That's April second,
Right.
you said?
It says it should be after that.
Nothing against resilient carbon incorporating and eliminating
I will fill out the grid
yearly.
according to what we have now, but I cannot guarantee that the numbers will not.
What's the number?
Okay. They shouldn't.
Good idea.
That doesn't mean
So, I'm not, maybe giving some little.
This is what I'm
So,
trying to
okay, so where would this change? With the lawyer or with the
The language, they're gonna continue to correct the languages and grammatical errors all the way until they sign it.
correct, but then do they change the figures too?
So the lawyers would do that for the budget amendments. I'm just waiting until the very last minute to put the numbers in here so I'm as accurate as possible with those numbers. Because I have to balance the budget for fiscal year 18 to get the lawyers in.
There's all kinds of stuff in here that we haven't talked about, easements and things. Right.
So we need to meet next week.
What if the kicks in,
We're probably gonna have to do more than next, or you say meet, not meet next week?
Well, I don't know, but we may be able to do some, but
To me, it seems like.
there's stuff we haven't even.
Just got the-
I understand all
that's
that.
why, that's why.
Right,
We
I
haven't had this
understand
operation
that.
available
Okay.
to us until.
No, I know, it's
There are a lot
not,
of secondary effects.
it's not anything you can do about it. Okay, so we'll do that, at least get some done, so you know. Is this room available?
It says by
I don't know.
they get the special.
All right, everyone,
Forced.
we do have some things that we can do next Wednesday morning. We probably won't have everything, but if you look at this draft, you'll see there's quite a few things in there that we haven't even touched on. So, Sonia will have a grid for us.
I'll update the grid according to what it seems to be.
So, the
You-
minutes will record that, what,
Okay, that we will meet next Wednesday,
the 28th
right,
at 9 AM?
9,
Okay.
and we'll get the place from Sonia.
And that replaces the Thursday meeting?
That will replace Thursday's meeting. Thursday night before
Okay.
Easter is a nightmare. You might just as well walk from your houses. That's how bad town is with traffic.
Oh.
On Easter night?
It's the Thursday before Easter.
Holy
It's
Thursday.
very, it's just, people are practicing at the churches and just stuff is going on and you can't find a place anywhere close. So we'll meet Wednesday morning, and we will go over some of the ones that we can do that have figures or require us to say we're not making a recommendation. And then we'll see how much we have left. But this warrant is pretty late.
Do you have a sense of how long the meeting might be?
Probably an hour, I mean, from what Sonia's saying that she'll have.
One more question.
Sure.
When are the write-ups due?
As soon as you can get the ones that have figures in them,
Okay.
because then we can pass them along. I really don't like spending a whole weekend trying to get stuff done because we're down to the last minute.
So what are some deadlines? It'll be helpful to know the deadlines.
Well, some people have them in already.
Yeah, I know, but what is
Okay.
the deadline? I understand that.
You were saying March 27th at one point.
Oh, we said, yeah, that's next Tuesday, but
Okay.
We can't do all of them.
no, you can't, we can't, there's no way. So, aim for the 30th, that'll give you all next week.
Okay, great.
And then we'll have some more. Select Board signs the warrant on the 2nd.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
there's a warrant review on the 4th. And the league has their presentation of the warrant that evening on the 4th.
Okay, sounds great.
And then they want stuff out and mailed out on the 19th. But in the meantime, we have to work with the person who's putting the book together. The other thing we have, I've forgotten, is that whole introduction, the whole Finance Committee report at the beginning of our report. What do we call it? We call it the
Report to town meeting.
it's a report to town meeting, and it's about 8 pages. So I'll have to get that out to people to look at what we did last year. We'll put in new numbers, but if you think we're missing anything that we want to emphasize, I don't do tracking well. So if you just do it in red, separate things and put it in red, if you see any changes or things you'd like to add. So what I'll do is I'll just send you that part of the report to look at, like it's just our report, the document, 8 pages, whatever. Take a look at that and see what you think about it. And then that's part of our book too, so that'll give us enough to do.
I'm out on the 5th.
You're where? I mean, what's the 5th?
The Thursday after next week. I'm not in town. I'm assuming.
Which was gonna be a question.
Oh, I see.
What about other meetings beyond next week? Do we think we might need any, and just for our calendars?
I have no idea. This
Okay.
process is getting the better of me. We will aim for next week, and do we say Wednesday?
So Wednesday we're meeting next week.
On the 28th at 9.
By Wednesday, I'll have a grid filled out with all the articles that I know we have now.
Okay.
And I will give everybody a clearer view, I think, of what we have. And then the motion, it's the motion review, not the warrant review on the 4th. So with the motions, people have to have their numbers in there. So the 4th is the latest, probably you're gonna have final numbers.
The 4th is the earliest we'll have final numbers?
Yeah.
But what we'll do is, I think Janice and I can go over final numbers. And if language has changed, it's a matter just of cut and pasting the language from the warrant onto what you've already written. So we won't
Not
be going,
necessarily.
Yeah.
what?
Not necessarily.
What do you mean?
Depends
No,
what the
Maria
language
takes
is.
the signed warrant and just cuts and pastes the actual signed warrant from there to the Finance Committee book, so that we're not trying to match the words from a warrant to the Finance Committee book to try to edit that. So,
But that's what we've been using though, the language of this
right. I don't
past
think
year.
you guys rewrite them. You don't.
We don't rewrite them,
warrant.
No.
we just put that up there, and so people can see, I mean, the reason we've done it this way is so people can see what the article is, and then write their comments
So the
based
write-ups
on
that
the
are coming in
article.
from everybody are just the write-ups. We put in the warrant language.
Right, but you're getting right now both, but we're saying eliminate the warrant language.
You just want the write-ups.
Okay. That's all I want is write-ups.
And you do the charts with the numbers also.
So, yeah, for the new person, that's a little confusing. 'Cause
You
I
can
was-
call. Call me and I'll
Okay.
go through everything.
You do the part that's underneath there where it says,
Basically,
But
we cut
this-
and paste from last year and put in this year's numbers.
But not this.
Yeah.
no, you don't
Or
do
you
the
can get it in
charts
and
at
file
all.
it.
They do the charts, it's the narrative, the text that we do.
Oh, we didn't have to put in the charts?
No,
Oh,
I
it took
know.
me so long, man. I had to like.
I know.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to ask you
PDF and
about
turn it
that.
No, no, no.
Oh, that was a horror show. It took
Well-
me so long. The rest of it was easy.
But that's because you don't get the parking tickets. I think that's the
I didn't get a parking ticket.
I go now. I gotta write a paper.
I looked at this and I was
Okay.
like, challenge.
All right,
Yeah, I
so let's just be clear then. We have been using the top part so that you could write, the text to respond to the to the warrant article. And some of them are the same as they were the previous year. The numbers have changed, at least what we're doing at this point in time.
Yeah, mine different. My text is important because I like to learn about what I'm going to talk about when I'm at the when I
Right,
make my little
right.
announcement.
So you're fine.
So in the future though, we don't need to actually incorporate the chart into our.
No, no.
Wish I
Okay.
had.
All right. So, any other questions? If not, we are going to move.
I move that we adjourn.
Well, can we do Bernie's minutes?
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, the minutes of the Ides of March, they're not mine per se, they're committee's minutes.
Okay.
What you wrote?
All right, let's move the minutes.
I move that we vote for Bernie's.
Give me a date.
March 15th.
March 15th.
Ides of
What's that?
Ides of
March
March.
15th.
March 15th?
Yeah, the Ides of March.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of Bernie's minutes?
All right.
There we go. Was everybody here? What was the date, Bernie?
March 15th.
March 15th? I don't think you were here, Tim.
March 15th?
All right, last week.
Last week, but it
Oh,
was the
you-
week before, wasn't it?
Okay, all right.
You weren't here.
All
the
in
first.
favor
I
of
wasn't here
adjourning?
the week before.
Here we go.
Okay.
Thank you, Amherst Media.
And we
It's
adjourned
been an
at
interesting meeting.
9:18.